Hi, all you economics students. It's a very hectic start to the year, only in February. So actually, I'm really tired. But as I've promised some of my students, I'm going to make this video for them and also to share with all you economics students out there. So you might have watched my previous video regarding a school's answer and how bad it was. So this is kind of like a follow-up. It is actually part of the same school's answers that were distributed to students. So the previous part was a part A, microeconomic question. This is a part B, market failure question. The question is quite self-explanatory, so I leave it to you. And this is actually a IB Econs question, but if you are an A-leveler, you're a JC Econs student, stay on, okay? It is going to be very applicable to you as well, and it doesn't matter whether you are H1, H2, SL, HL, doesn't matter at all, okay? This whole question and the answers, okay, all totally relevant to you. Now, introduction, I have no issue, okay? You can run through this on your own. Then it starts with government's direct provision, okay, of course this is some typo and so on, but let's ignore that. Direct provision, sometimes necessary. Then essentially it goes into explaining the characteristics of the public goods. You run through this yourself. The first one is about non-rivalrous in consumption. Given that marginal cost is zero, private firms seek to achieve allocative efficiency. Okay, where got private firms seek to achieve allocative efficiency? That's not the private firm's job to do. Okay, it is governments that want to achieve allocated efficiency, right? Private firms are just going to seek profit maximization. So this line itself, an error. Okay, the explanation should not be like this. Okay, so in class and through the model essays that I give to my students, they learn the correct version. Okay, but as you can tell, all those with some economics knowledge, you should see that this line is just it's just a glaring error. Okay, where got private firms seek to achieve allocated efficiency? So this explanation is just not right. Okay. Then I'm going to skip this point, or at least just let you know that I prefer to say public good non-excludable, difficult to exclude anyone, including non-payers. Okay, so that the meaning is more, an explanation is more complete, more comprehensive. Okay, it's not just about excluding non-payers, but non-E basically means that you just cannot exclude anyone, including non-payers. Okay, and then the point about no incentive for anyone to provide the good should really be part of the explanation of non-excludable. Alright, so non-excludable leads to a free ridership problem. You must be able to explain that. And because of free ridership problem, no one is willing to pay for the good, and so there will be no incentive for the firm to provide the good. This point should have been somewhere below. Okay, alright, free ridership problem. Then you talk about the firm not being able to charge for the good, and therefore no incentive to provide the good. Okay, so not very good explanation. Real world example, the school gave homeland security. It's not completely wrong, but I would say it is not a preferred ideal real world example, because if you think about policing job, there are quite a lot of aspects of the policing job that is actually rivalrous in consumption. Okay, if the police is investigating a case, there will be lesser resources available to investigate other cases. Okay, unless you be very specific and talk about things like the surveillance, the deterrence effect. Okay, then that one possibly can pass off as a public good. And to me, well, national defense, street lighting, flood control systems, these are far more clear-cut examples of public goods that should have been given instead. Okay, and I would say this one is going to lead to another error, which I will point out to you later. Now, some of these explanations are all good. Okay, so when it is good, I say it is good. All right. Okay, this is all good. Okay, you can run through all this yourself. Now, then they have this point about how when the government spends on public goods, provides public goods, there is also going to be an increased government spending that can help boost actual economic growth. Firstly, you must have learned macroeconomics to appreciate this point. Okay, this is a good effort by the teacher, by the school, but I would not accept this point, or I would say not a very good point to include. Okay, not completely wrong, because the focus of the question is on whether they should always intervene to provide public goods. Public goods. Okay, public goods. That's the focus of the question. If you want to talk about, oh, there will be more government spending that can boost growth, they don't have to be providing public goods to achieve that. They can provide other things. Right? They can provide merit goods. Okay, they can give ang pao to the people, transfer payments. Okay, so this point is going off public goods. So I'm not very keen on this point. Okay, and really we just don't need it at all for this question. They gave an example, real world example, US national defense. This is good, this is fine. Okay, in my classes for my students, I gave a Singapore example. But if you run through the explanations, it stops short of fully answering the question. Okay, every time you explain, you know, it's always best that you must link back to some economic concepts that will fully answer the question, right? So this part, right, is all about justifying direct provision, why the government must provide. So you should ask yourself, we should ask ourselves, if the American government never provide national defense, then how? Okay, and therefore, okay, so what if they don't provide national defense? Okay, linked to detrimental consequences to the US. okay, invasion, okay, and then there will be loss of the national assets, and deaths that may occur, etc. Right? You have to cede sovereignty maybe to Mexico, okay, and so on, linked to societal welfare losses as a result. Okay, there must be this kind of consequences. If the government don't provide national defense, then what? Okay, essentially that's my point. Okay, so you must complete your explanation with a so what and linking back to answering the question. Again, let's take a look at the question. Okay, why the government should always directly provide public goods. So link back to, so they must provide, otherwise what will happen? Otherwise we'll get invaded by Mexico and so on. Okay, that was just a joke. Now, why direct provision is sometimes not ideal and what the government needs to consider. So over in this section, they are lacking in real world examples, okay? And there are better real world examples than what they're trying to give. So in my classes, okay, I provide better real world examples to convey this point that in certain cases, government's direct provision of public goods may not be needed. Okay, so better to beef that up with real world examples. Now, then you have all these points, which is not bad. I put some ticks over here. Again, it is not linking enough to answering the question. Okay, it is not justifying the direct provision, or in this case, not direct provision enough. So for example, they have this point. Okay, other public goods such as street lightings, particularly in remote places, might be not so necessary. Okay, so this is a good point. Okay, I have it in my own essay as well. Okay, but you should link to a bigger concept. So at the end of the day, the government needs to consider. Don't just provide any public good, right? And don't just provide any amount of public good. They must consider whether the social benefits outweigh the social cost of the provision. Okay, so this is a very important concept that you should be linking back to. Okay, unfortunately, it is missing. Now it is coming to other possible solutions. Instead of direct provision, could the government do something else? Now, before they do this point, they should have included other problems with direct provision. Okay, this itself is their effort, which is not bad, but not enough. Okay, I think you need to consider, okay, strain on government's budget, opportunity cost, okay, which actually, to be fair, now that I take a look at this paragraph, okay, they have a little bit of the point here. Okay, so to be fair, not too bad. They should also include productive inefficiencies associated with direct provision. Okay, I hope that rings a bell, you know what I mean. So they should include all these points, and then it will be best to include these points before talking about the next option, which is contracting out to the private sector instead. Okay, so contracting out, that's a fair alternative, but actually I also want you all to take note that contracting out is not entirely different from direct provision. Actually, a contracting out is just an improvement to the direct provision solution. It should be seen as a variant of direct provision. Okay, now what does this contracting out mean? I'm not going to be running through all that theory here, but you need to understand that essentially why I say it is a variant, it is because you got to ask the question, who is the one contracting out? It is the government that's actually contracting out to the private sector. It is the government that's actually hiring a private sector to provide the street lighting, to provide the flood control system. Okay, and with this understanding, then you actually will know that the government is involved. The government is involved in ensuring that this good is provided. It's just that instead of doing it themselves, okay, the civil servants go and build the flood control system themselves. No, the government is hiring a contractor to build, to maintain, okay, the drainages and blah, 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 blah. That's called contracting out, okay? So actually, government provision is still involved. That's why my point is you need to conceptually understand that this is a variant of direct provision, okay? And to carry these points well, you should link back to the problems of direct provision. What are the problems? The problems include the productive inefficiencies. That's why you want to contract out. You want to engage private sector firms to do the job instead of civil servants go and do the job. Because when you do that, then a lot of issues, okay, expertise as well as cost inefficiencies that may occur. All right. So improve this whole section on contracting out by linking back to those problems of direct provision. Now, real example. MHA contracting out physical security, safety enforcement to auxiliary police forces, again, this may not be completely wrong, but if you think about the services that Certis, Cisco, and Atos provide, are they really public goods? Are they really non-rivalrous in consumption? Okay, a little bit questionable, right? So that is why I personally will not go for this example. There are more clear-cut, real-world examples that you can use in this area, whether Singapore or other countries, where the governments contract out the construction, the maintenance of street lightings. Okay, so that one is, to me, a far more safer, obvious, clearer example. Okay, so I personally wouldn't accept this example. Next, this is a good point. Okay, you can run through it yourself. Now, contracting out should not be the only solution, ideally. Okay, should not be the only alternative solution ideally, because as I said, contracting out actually is sort of like a variant of direct provision. So we should be armed with other possible solutions. So in my classes, in my model answers, I offer two other possible solutions that are very different from direct provision. And in fact, my answers are not easily found in IB textbooks or any economics textbooks. Okay, but they are going to be extremely helpful, useful in answering in particular this question. Okay, so that is precisely why I teach my students those two other solutions to the market failure of public goods. Finally, concluding section, synthesis, not very good. Again, not very substantial. They should have included the point that not all public goods should be provided for and what it depends on, okay, which is linked back to this point earlier about whether the social benefits outweigh the social costs. Okay, so this point, this concluding section, not fantastic. Okay, there is some improvement that should be made. And in addition to this, I think they should also bring up the issue, or we should also bring up the issue about depending on the government's budget. Okay, because if the government no money, then maybe street lighting, additional street lighting may not be the good they should provide. Maybe they have to prioritize healthcare. Maybe healthcare is going to be more valuable to the society. Okay, and that is the part about weighing opportunity cost. Okay, which is very important, right? And therefore they need to factor this point in. Okay, so that is how I will improve on the concluding section, including it depends on the state of the government's budget, and explain further from there. So you might find this answer familiar. I hope you benefit from this. All right, and if you are the teacher who has produced this answer, well, these are my comments. I hope you take this positively and let's improve together. Thank you. Ciao.